Hey, gang, like a lot of you, I spent a lot of yesterday cooking and cleaning and getting things all set up and didn't spend a lot of time doing this. So I'm a day late to the party on this one. This is going to be Crusader and Tumbril Day and then Aegis Day. I'll just kind of do them all at once. Obviously, the War Bond sales for both Crusader and Tumbril are over now, but come tomorrow, we should be getting new ones for the finale. Again, one of my plans here is I'm going through all the ships of the different manufacturers in these individual days, as opposed to on the finale where I've already described what all the ships are in the previous vids. I won't have to do that in the finale. I can just focus on this is sort of the chain that you want to build thing. So with that out of the way, let's just go ahead and get in since we're actually doing 3 manufacturers today. A1 Spirit is a small bomber. The Spirit chassis is a pretty good one. A lot of space on the inside. This one carries size 5 bombs, which is exclusive to this one. I would not be shocked if they made the Gladiator capable of carrying actual bombs, but we'll see. They might or might not. We'll find out one day. They've already kind of shown off bombs in place of missiles before, but not really a use for it in the game other than trolling people that are on the ground. And now that we have the MDC, kind of cuts down on the usefulness of this for right now. We'll kind of see what happens in the future. And then taking that up to 11, we got the A2 Hercules, which has size 10 bombs. And again, these things are basically, they are MOABs, mother of all bombs, basically one step down from a nuke. If you drop them at low atmosphere, like kind of like this guy is doing, if you're low flying in an A2 and you drop one, bad stuff is gonna happen to your A2 because you will get caught in the explosion. $750 for a very specialized ship. It does have a ton of guns, and if you can crew this thing up, I believe it has, if you count all of the weapons on it, it's roughly equivalent to a hammerhead, but most of the weapons are pointed down. So this thing is a supreme ground clearer. I assume this will be very popular when players start building bases. Other people will be attacking bases in the A2, but for 750, it's pretty steep. It can also carry a large vehicle, a single large vehicle up front. So think a Tonk, something on the Atlas chassis. That's right. Not to be confused with the Walker. Let's move on. We've got the Ares Inferno. So when they introduced the A2 in the Ares, it was kind of a shocker because Crusader to that point was kind of known as a civilian outfit. They didn't have weapons of war. They were like transport specialists, and think like a Mercury Star Runner and the Genesis passenger mover. It would be like, man, I'm trying to think of someone like Airbus. I don't know if Airbus actually makes fighters for the European Union or not. Maybe, probably, but it would be like Airbus rolling out a light fighter to Germany or something like that. It would be kind of out of character for the company, I think. Maybe that's a bad example. Airbus, I don't know so well. I was about to say Boeing, but I was like, no, Boeing's definitely made weapons of war. But anyway, the Ares. This is a huge size 7. It's a big gun. It's a very, very large gun. This one, the Inferno, is ballistic, which again is going to punch through shields and go right to components. This thing is going to have its resurgence very soon. It's basically the space A10. Flies very well. It kind of went through a stage where, especially the Ares Ion, needed a nerf. Like we were testing it in Evocati when they were rolling it out, and it was literally a sniper ship. You could set 2-3 clicks off, or 2 or 3,000 off, and just plink gladiuses. You'd be like, shoot that one, and if it didn't die in one shot, it would definitely die in two. Like before you even popped up on their radar, they were blowing up. It was so easy to run mercenary missions and obviously broken, so they reeled it in a little bit. It's kind of gotten a resurgence lately. Both of them have. When when engineering and armor comes in, the Ares Inferno will be very dangerous for capital ships. Ares Ion will be pretty good at lowering shields, I'll put it that way. And probably pretty good. It's still good at popping little ships. For 250, for a very specialized heavy fighter, it does not have an interior. It's just the cockpit. Very specialized, but if this is what you want to do and you want to hunt larger ships, anything like probably Freelancer and larger, yeah, these ships are really good at that. And if you do land a hit on smaller ships, it'll hurt them a lot. So if you're up against a good pilot, probably not as much. You'll get eaten alive by a light fighter, but that's kind of the rock, scissors, paper. That's how it's supposed to work. Anyway, moving on. The C1 Spirit, this is a good cargo mover. It has a fair amount of space in the back, and while its actual listed cargo is more limited than you would think, you can stack cargo in here a lot higher than the cargo grid would suggest. Now keep in mind it's not stable, so it can rock around and that causes all sorts of problems, but this thing can carry a good bit of cargo, and the bay is very large. Does have an interior, you can log out in it. Ostensibly a two-person ship, but you can easily solo this thing. It's kind of in that starter plus territory almost for 125, same category as the Cutlass, the Freelancer, those kinds of ships. If you're just looking to run cargo, you could do a lot less or a lot worse than the Spirit. C2, now this one can carry 2 heavy vehicles, so 2 tonks, but it's kind of the premier cargo mover right now. The whole C is gradually taking that over as they fix that loop, but this thing has the advantage that obviously it can land on the ground, can carry a huge amount of cargo, nowhere near as much as the whole C, but can land on the ground and it's all interior. So in order to get the cargo, you can't just yank it off the spindles. You actually have to soft F the ship and open it up, and that's not a super easy thing to do. It does, you can kind of see these shoulders right here, does have size, I believe size 4 guns, and then it's got a couple size 3 turrets on the back. You can kind of see one right there, and then there's one kind of up here. And the co-pilot controls both of those guns at once. So when you're shooting backwards, it shoots both turrets at once, so you're getting 4 shots for the price of 1. Kind of a weird choice rather than just having 1 turret with 4 guns on it, but not horrible. I guess it does kind of limit the damage that someone can do if they're targeting your turrets. They have to take out 2 turrets to knock out all of your firepower rather than just 1. I don't know. Mild advantage, $400. Is it worth $400? I'd say CCU from something smaller if possible. Buying in game, this is kind of one of those points where if you've got $400 laying around and this is what you want to do, this thing can move a huge amount of cargo. Normally for anything over $200, I'd say buy in game, but the grind is real when you're doing something like this. In this case, I would agree with the info runners, buy down. So buy a big ship and you can buy everything that's underneath it. Anyways, I am taking a long time to talk about these because I do like Crusader. E1 Spirit is not in the game yet. We do not have this is a passenger liner for, I think, like 12 people. So think of this as like a Learjet. Very small. Well, relatively small. Think like Freelancer sized, but it does carry people. That loop is not in the game. They haven't quite figured out how to get NPCs to walk onto a ship, sit down, and then do the whole grading system for passenger liner, because once they do, we're getting this. This is the Genesis Starliner. This thing will certainly go up in price because this is the end game passenger mover. Very large. Think like 747 doubled is about what this thing carries. It's ridiculously large. This is the original concept from, I believe, 2015, maybe 2014. So it'll change a little bit in concept, probably end up looking more like the Hercules series if I had to guess, but very cool ship. Very, very specialized. So unless you want your whole gameplay, I believe it can carry cargo, but I mean, its role is to carry humans, like people from place to place. And they do have a troop transport version of this. I assume they'll roll out a couple of variants. I wouldn't be shocked if there was a construction variant or something like that, just because the chassis is larger than the Hercules, which is another reason why I say this will probably go up in price once they start building it. The Intrepid, this is the one that everybody just railed on when it was in the PTU because it was so ugly. But then you get your hands on it and you're flying around. It's a relatively new ship. I think it's only a year and a half, 2 years old. It's got one size 3 gun over here, and I think it carries a couple missiles. Kind of a starter plus, so think like Titan, Nomad, Sulian. It's in that range. Got a cool interior, got like a bed, a kitchen, all sorts of stuff. And then it kind of has 2 cargo bays on either side that carry, I think, 6 SEU total, but they drop down. There's like 2 elevators here that drop down. You can store a couple of the bikes in there, which is kind of nice. You could do worse. The Intrepid flies nice, and it's grown on me looks wise. So you see a lot of these with new players, and I don't blame them. It's a good one. M2. This one is kind of a good middle ground in between the C2 and the A2. It does not have bombs, but it does have more guns, and it carries more cargo than the A2, less cargo than the C2. It can still carry 2 tonks in it, so 2 large vehicles do fit in this. It has more armor and more hit points than the C2, fewer guns than the A2. So, I mean, there's a lot of trade-offs here, but if you're going to be moving cargo in shady areas, I have an M2 as a loaner for something. I think I have a Liberator in the M2 as the loaner on it. I will usually pull the M2 as opposed to the C2 just because it withstands damage a little bit better. And you can have a few more seconds to get away or make a decision than you would in a C2. Anyways, 520, you're starting to get up into real money here. Mercury Star Rare, one of my favorite ships in the game. This thing went through a lot of design changes in between concept and reality, and unfortunately, this was before they really nailed down both the Crusader style guide and how to make ships. It's got some elements in it that are really neat, and then it's got some that are just huge head scratchers. The one most people complain about is the fact that it's only got one exit, which is the ramp in the back. But that isn't the thing that I have a problem with. It's got basically this much of the ship is just crawl spaces. They've got 2 levels, but the under level is literally just a crawl space that's a deliberate maze. They were trying to make something like the Millennium Falcon here, and unfortunately, they should have just made little hidey holes in places that couldn't be scanned, would have done the same thing, and then shrunk the ship just a hair, like made it shorter. Because this is a very fat ship. It's still one of my favorite ships in the game. If you ever watch me flying around on my own, I'm usually in Cloudbreaker, which is my MSR that I've had since concept. I wish they would kind of go back and do a soft fix up on this ship, but they probably are never going to. They might do a Mark II one day in the far distant future, but that is a talk for the next video, not this one. And then we're back to the A1 Spirit. So again, the war bond is gone. Okay, so good. So I don't have anything confusing there. You get the fusion paint, which is this weird blue and green paint. You get the stalwart paint, which is red, white, and blue, so very patriotic. And the Cerberus paint, which is Cerberus paint, which is what I typically put on my M2 when I'm flying around. It's basically pitch black. It almost looks metallic, which is a little bit weird. I think that's the only ones that we got. So let's go ahead and pop over to Tumbril. Tumbril is a ground vehicle group. They don't make any flyers. So they got the Cyclone here, which is kind of the premier, I'd say kind of premier off-road vehicle. It's a 2-seater. and it carries a 1 SCU box in the back, like a full-size 1 SCU box in the back if you want to. Then you have the AA version, which I'm trying to remember if this has an EMP on it. It might actually have an EMP on it. Carries 4 missiles, $80. So you're starting to get into the territory with ground vehicles. This is something InfoRunner says all the time that I agree with. And again, you can hear the dogs are doing zoomies in the background, which makes me happy. So I'm not going to stop them. $80 is like real money there. You can get a Titan, get enough money in an hour to buy one of these in game, which is kind of what I'd suggest to do with any ground vehicle, unless you specifically have plans of being like a ground combat operation and you know this is a vehicle that you don't want to grind for, you want to have it on day one. Again, I make the assumption that my audience are adults with careers and their own budgets. The Cyclone MT. So there is, where is it? Okay, so they've got the Cyclone TR over here, which again, $65, has the size 1 gun on the back of it. So it's technically a 3-seater. And then you've got the AA version, which has a few missiles and an EMP. But then you've got the Cyclone MT, which is, again, a 3-seater if you count the turret. And the turret has 4 missiles and the gun. So if you're going to get either the AA or the turret version, just get the Cyclone MT. Again, $75, same cost as the Titan. You could buy the Titan, run missions for an hour, and be able to buy the MT in game. The Racer, a little bit faster, has a boost, so you can basically do an afterburner on it. So if you're going to be into ground racing, things like the Daymar Rally, that kind of thing, you could do worse, because these are very good off-road. The Cyclone series, very good at off-road. And then you have the RN, which I actually do own one of these. It has a scanner on the top, and I believe it has a lower signature, which ground vehicles already have super low signatures. You can't detect them until you're basically right on top of them. I have this one more for a machinima that I'm planning on doing than actual in-game use, but not a bad ship if you're kind of a ranger scout type thing. $65. Again, you're getting into Titan territory. You might as well just get a Titan or a Nomad or something like that, or a C1, and earn this in game. That would be my suggestion, but I totally understand if you don't. The Nova. So you will always hear people talk about this as the Tonk, Tonk. And that is because one of the vehicle artists who work on it was aggressively French, and he would always say Tonk instead of tank. And we loved him for it because he made really cool designs. And so we always call this the Tonk. It is definitely an endearing thing, not an insulting thing. So anyway, the tank, the Nova tank, is 3-person. If you really want to crew it up, you can crew it with 2 and be fine. It's got missiles. It's got horrific amounts of armor on it. It is really hard to kill. And it's got this size 5 ballistic gun, which is really nasty. $120 though. Again, you're talking about real money. Maybe buy it in game unless you're dreaming of being a tanker in a space simulator game. The Ranger series. So there are a few of these. This one carries 1/8 SCU boxes. It carries 2 of them. We don't have these in game, so don't buy these expecting to ride them around. They're very tiny. They're about the same size as a Pulse. One of the reasons we haven't seen these in game yet, you have the Racer version, then you've got this one, which has 2 size 1 guns. One of the reasons why we haven't seen these in game yet is because they're still trying to figure out how to make 2 wheels work. And CIG, of course, has to reinvent the wheel every time they make something. So, this one's kind of on the back burner, not really a priority for them. And then you're kind of talking about utility and usefulness in a game that has levitating space bikes. You're not going to be able to take this one in space. You're only going to be able to drive it on the ground. It doesn't fly, so right there it's going to be slower than the space bikes that can fly, or the hover bikes. Still very cool. I've got the 3-pack that came with the concept because, of course, I do. Anyway, the Storm is I say mini tank, but it is as wide as the regular tank, so it only fits in things that can fit the tank, which, if you're going to bring this, you might as well bring the Nova. But it is, in theory, faster. It's got two size 3 or 4 guns up here. Very cool, single-seater. You get sucked into the cockpit, has gun rack over here that just kind of pops out. It's a very cool vehicle. They haven't quite nailed down the mass of these things yet. Both this, less so the Nova, but more so this and this. They lack the gravity that a vehicle like this should. So they kind of feel like driving helium balloons. You'll go over a rock and you'll just spin around in the air for 10 seconds. It's just bizarre. They can't get up over things. So I mean, the advantage of tracks is obviously traction, and these things can't go up hills, they can't go over rocks, they get stuffed by cacti and stuff like that. So the problem with this isn't its utility, it's the mechanics. Like, it's not really a priority for them. They've kind of been dialing in things on the wheeled vehicles, but the treaded vehicles, they just don't feel right. The Storm is kind of cool. Carries a lot of missiles on it, or the Storm AA, a lot of missiles. So this is the kind of thing that you could drop off at Jumptown or Hathor or something like that and really dissuade a fighter or something from coming closer, because they'll just have constant missile warnings. You team this up with something like the MDC, and you can actually lock down an area pretty well. Not many people own these, so most people aren't thinking about them when they approach a ground area, and they aren't used to engaging them. Again, any of the ground vehicles are going to have very small signatures and hard to detect. And that is it for Tumbril. Of course, you got frostbite paint, the gunmetal paint, which is just gray, and the landfall paint, which I believe is sort of like a very light sea green. I think that's it. Yeah, they're just doing 3 per. Now let's pick up the pace a little bit and go to the OG, Aegis. Obviously, they make any combat vehicle that isn't made by Anvil is typically made by Aegis, although now you have to throw RSI into the mix. So let's go ahead and get into it because there's a lot of them. The Eclipse is the war bond for today. Again, you get it with 10-year. It carries 3 size 9 torpedoes and is basically invisible on radar. It is supposed to have a little bit more functionality. The wings are supposed to transform a little bit more. Those animations were never put in. Very, very, very specialized ship. I think it has 2 size 2 guns, but if you're dogfighting in this thing, you're doing it wrong. Really, it's a boom and zoom. So you're just supposed to fly in, launch your torpedoes at a larger ship, and disappear into the night. All right, for ships that we have for sale for Aegis, again, you kind of got the Avenger series. The Stalker is the bounty hunter version, and I know I'm going to screw one of these up because there's a lot of different Avengers. Oh, something that I forgot to mention. If the Crusader Ares had come out now, it would definitely be a weapons kit and not 2 separate ships. Anyway, Avenger Stalker. It has, I believe, prisoner racks in the cargo bay. So it doesn't have a cargo bay. It has prisoner racks for prisoners. Other than that, it's got the size 3 up front and 2 size 2s. The Avengers all fly really well, but they're, again, kind of on the cheap end of the starter plus territory. So you basically get a Titan, start doing a bunch of different kinds of missions. You're kind of like, ooh, this one's cool. Bounty hunting to this degree where you're actually grabbing people and putting them on the racks isn't in the game yet, but this is a decent fighter. Avenger Titan, this is the one that I tell people, if you're going to get into the game and you got $60, which is about what most modern games cost, get an Avenger Titan. It does everything. It's really good at flying. It's a decent fighter. It's not something that you're going to win a bunch of high-level PvP missions in, but you can hold your own in engagements against NPCs. It's got a cargo bay. It's got a bed you can log out in. Just a very useful kind of do everything ship. It's kind of the first of the Swiss Army knives. The Titan Renegade, it's basically just the Titan with a paint job. I think it comes with higher end components and a little bit different loadout, but again, you can do that yourself, not the paint job, obviously, unfortunately, but you can do the guns. The Warlocks, this one comes with an EMP. So as opposed to a cargo bay, the whole back here is a big spinning EMP. Very niche, I guess you could say. But I mean, I guess if you were going to do the combat thing, you could look at something like the Stalker or the Avenger and say for 85 or for 15 more dollars, I can get an EMP ship that can start knocking down other ships' shields and eventually disabling them. Again, the Eclipse, already talked about that. $300. Steep, but and very specific ship, but there you go. Gladius, this is the hero ship of Squadron 42, which also means that it tends to be the most current as far as the in-game tech goes. It will typically have the most modern flight model, most modern MFDs, all of that, because it's the ship they're using for Squadron 42. So it has to have the newest tech available to make sure that it works. Anyway, very good dogfighter, will always be a good dogfighter because, again, it's a small silhouette, small cross section, has decent gun loadout, has decent missile weapon loadout, is very maneuverable, very light. When armor's in the game, it won't be the most survivable thing in the world, but it's a light fighter, so go fig. The Valiant, again, this is like the Stalker, or the Titan, what is it called? Renegade. It's basically, they came out with them at the same time. The Valiant is just a special paint job, and it comes stock with higher level components, I believe, and like a different weapon loadout, but again, you can do that in the game. First of the Corvettes, the Hammerhead 725. You need a big crew for this thing. This is kind of the, think of it as kind of like the Perseus, but whereas the Perseus punches up, the Hammerhead is punching down. This thing has 6 turrets, each with 4 size, 4 guns, and it has size 5 torpedoes. You do need other people. All of these turrets are manned, so you have to have really 7 people to really crew this ship. And realistically, once engineering's in, you're probably looking at like 9, because you're going to need someone, at least 2 engineers running around fixing stuff. Doesn't hurt if you have a co-pilot. It is a 2-person bridge, but you don't have to have one. Interesting thing on this is that the docking ring is on the front, which is unique, but very cool ship, very specialized, made for killing fighters. Once armor is in the game, this thing will have a much better time. Right now, going up against light fighters is a nightmare for this thing because the turrets can't traverse fast enough to track them all before the light fighters can pop this thing, since it's just total number of hit points. Light fighters can outmaneuver it and just shoot it to death. For that matter, you could take this thing out with like 4 Furies. That will not be the case for too much longer because armor will come into the game and it can largely ignore, if I had to guess, size 1 or size 2 guns entirely. And those light fighters are going to start having a lot more trouble with things like the Hammerhead. The Idris piece. So this is the civilian model. It doesn't come with any big gun up front. So it doesn't have the railgun. It doesn't have the torpedoes. It doesn't have the big laser. $1,900. Of course, this is a limited ship. And of course, it's sold out. So you have to win an F5 war to get it. $1,900 for $2,000. You can get this thing. Huge cargo bay. Lots of room for lots of fighters or vehicles or whatever you want to carry in it. Very, very cool ship. We're going to be very well acquainted with the Idris thanks to Squadron 42. The Javelin for $3,000. Again, special limited ship, sold out for $3,000. I'm sure you can find it online for $6,000 from the resellers. The Nautilus shouldn't be limited. No, it's not. So, well, it says in stock. I think that just means it's for sale. This is not in the game yet. This is a mine layer, and it can also retrieve mines. Got a weird number of guns on it, too. It's got two very large guns. I believe they're size 6 or size 7 guns up front. And it's got two big turrets on either side. Of course, it can lay down the minefield. Who knows when we're going to see this thing? I thought that we were going to start seeing mines as quantum obstacles in the game really soon, like a year or two back, actually. And they just kind of put it on ice, probably looking to release it with the Nautilus. It's one of those ships that, again, this thing is about the same size range as like the Hammerhead, the Perseus, a little bit smaller than the Polaris as of right now. They took a look at it a year or two back to kind of start tweaking the concept a little bit, but they said it's largely the same. Who knows when we'll see this? 2027, 2028, who knows? I thought that there was a chance that it might sneak into Squadron 42 like the Perseus did, where it kind of leapfrogged the Galaxy. Ended up not being the case, or who knows when we're going to see this. Is one of the oddballs in the Aegis lineup. We've got the Reclaimer, which really you would think this thing would be more of an Argo ship or maybe RSI. And every time they mention this one, they kind of say, yeah, there are some ships that we're kind of considering maybe they were in the wrong manufacturer. They're almost certainly talking about the Reclaimer because it's one of the few ships in this lineup that really isn't a combat ship. Obviously, this was one of the first really huge ships they made. It's dated, but it's very cool inside. You definitely get Nostromo vibes, which is intentional. They've tweaked the game so much since this thing was not only concepted, but actually made, that it doesn't really fit the modern aesthetics. Probably will not get a full rework though, because they did lay it out pretty well and the metrics on it work. And this is not the Starfarer, I'll put it that way. It just might change manufacturers, I would think, but we'll see. Anyway, for $400, that seems real steep. This thing is basically just a license to print money. One of my best friends and org member, Wolfie, he has one of these, and he has more money than anyone else in the org by a considerable margin. Tens of millions of dollars, because he just goes out there to decompress from work and salvages big ships, and just, it's a license to print money. And that'll probably change a little bit as time goes on, because CIG wants a little bit more sinks than that, but this ship will never ever not be a license to just print money. And when base construction comes into the game and you need construction materials, it'll be even more useful. Realistically, you probably need 5 to 8 people to fully crew this thing. Right now, you can solo pilot this thing and you're fine, especially now that it has PDCs to protect itself. The Redeemer. This thing, after they rolled out the Paladin, this thing kind of became obsolete. Now, I don't think that will remain the case for long. Basically, what they're going to do is tweak this thing's maneuverability profile and make it super maneuverable. They might downsize the guns a little bit and make it more of like a mini Corvette, sort of like the Hammerhead, that its job is to pop smaller ships that are flying around. But it still has its uses right now. I mean, the Paladin definitely outstrips it in being able to pop larger ships. But I mean, it's still got size 4 guns on those 2 big manned turrets. You can put somebody on a back turret. You can put someone on this nose turret. The pilot gets control. If there's not someone on the nose turret, they get control of the nose turret and the underwing guns. You can kind of see them right there, which is still a fair amount of firepower. You could realistically solo fly this thing and still do pretty well. But if you're not putting someone at least in the 2 big turrets, you're really missing out on a lot. 330, this was a fan-made concept. It was the next great starship, and this was not the one I voted for, but it's grown on me in the last few years. It does have its use, but with the Paladin in the mix, CIG kind of needs to dial in what its new use is going to be. The Retaliator. 175, good value for this. I would say compare this value to the Eclipse because this thing carries way more torpedoes. It's kind of stealthy on its own. One thing I thought they kind of did an update pass on it a couple years back during lockdown. And I was sure they were going to pull some of the turrets or make them remote or even just replace them with PDCs. They didn't. This thing has, I believe, 7 turrets. So it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it might have another one tucked up in there. So it's got like 6 turrets, and they're all small guns. So they're not super useful, but it does have modular bays here that carry big size 9 torpedoes. I believe it carries like 4 to 6 each. So, I mean, this thing is think of it as a B1B, something like that. Very much looks and flies like that. Something to note is that if you are a solo pilot, the only thing you will control is the torpedoes. All of these turrets are manned turrets. You do not get the use of them when you're flying. They might have changed that recently. I'm not sure, but as far as I know, all of the turrets are manned and the pilot does not control any of them. So if you want to shoot things, you got to have a friend. Very specific ship made for attacking large ships after they've been softened up a little bit. You could do worse. Definitely bring a couple escorts. Saber, this is a stealth fighter, so it does have a lower signature right now. 4 size 3 guns. Hits pretty hard. It's not an especially tough ship, but it can flit in and out of detection pretty easily, which makes it relatively useful. For whatever reason, though, it is not an S tier dogfighter. It tends to land somewhere in B to C. You'd have to talk to the dogfighters. I'm sure I'll have a couple comment below on why it's not a top tier. It was for a while. I think they nerfed its maneuverability, so it can't really stay nose on target for very long. That just kind of balances out stealth capabilities. And again, you've got another special version that just comes with, I believe, it comes with 2 laser cannons and 2 ballistic cannons and a special paint job. And I believe it comes with slightly better components, but it's basically the same ship. You could just loot better components and get the same thing. The Firebird, so the whole Saber series, the Saber Raven was a special release when Sony released their Optane hard drive. They had a special card they released with that drive that you could get the Saber Raven. CIG eventually made the Firebird and what I assume is the Peregrine, which is the racer, to give people access to the Raven without calling it the Raven. And they are different. So the Saber Raven has 2 EMPs on it. Instead of an EMP, this one has 2 ballistic cannons, I believe are size 3s, and like 24 missiles that can launch 8 at a time from a thing on the bottom, a sort of belly launcher. It's kind of cool. These are mildly stealthy. Peregrine, I don't think the Peregrine has any guns, but it's very fast. So if you're a racer, there you go. The Vanguard series. So the Vanguard series has a few different models here, and I'll just kind of talk about all of them. The Warden is the sort of standard model. It's just a big, heavy fighter with long range. Very tanky. Can't really hold up right now, but once armor comes in, it'll kind of hold its own. Again, this is one of those ships where I think CIG either needs to decrease the range of ships so that light fighters don't have the range, so it can kind of create a niche for these, or expand how big their systems are, like spread them out a bit more so that it accomplishes the same thing. Anyway, Vanguard Sentinel is this is the one that has an EMP on it and a lot of energy guns. They all kind of have the same hard points on them, except for the Harbinger has 2 size 5 torpedoes on it, I believe. It carries size 5 torpedoes. I don't remember how many it carries, but this one is made to attack like medium to medium large ships. So think Connie sizes, that kind of thing. The Hoplite is a drop ship, so it kind of pulls that inner bay to carry, I believe, 6 people. Calling it a drop ship is probably a bit much. It doesn't carry any other vehicles or anything like that, just carries the troops in. So this is probably more like a Black Hawk. It can carry people in fight and stuff like that, and it carries them into the fight up in the front. There are other ships that probably do this better, so if you're looking at the Hoplite, maybe check those out instead. The Vulcan, this is another one of those that I guess it kind of fits in. It's sort of the AAA tow truck repair truck. It's got these little drones, which guess why it's not in the game yet, that will go and repair ships and rearm ships on the move. Carries a little bit of a fuel tank so it can refuel other ships. I'm trying to remember what else it has. It'll probably eventually have a crafting bay on it, which is another thing that it's waiting for. Not very big guns, kind of dump truck looking, and that's kind of what it does. And gang, that is it for Aegis. Let's go on down, look at the skins. Again, we don't have any new skins, so these are available at most sales that you'll see this ship. These ships always pop up. These ships and these skins always pop up during Invictus, which apparently we're getting a battle cruiser. But again, that is a talk for the next video. You got the Ironweave paint, which is black and white with a little blue piping. You got the Firebreak paint, which is black and red with white piping. And then you got the Ambush paint, which is the sort of that. And that's it, gang. That's it for the sales over the last 2 days. Let me know what you think of these manufacturers. Let me know if you got a reclaimer, if you think it's the license to print money that I do, or what do you think of these exclusive sales that they do that you got to win an F5 war, because really not a fan of those. I get they want to limit those number of ships so people aren't all solo piloting Idrises around the verse as their only ships, but it's just frustrating. I wish they would kind of blacklist the resellers. Anyway, gang, that's all I got for this one. Let me know what you think down below. Be good to each other. Keep an eye out for the next video where I'm going to kind of go over the ship talk that they had yesterday. I'll try to give you a truncated version of that rather than a 2-hour version. Catch you next time.